Hi, my name's Claire, and I am talking to you today about my career because I've always been in education. So I started teaching in 1993 after qualifying as a teacher after doing a Bachelor of Education degree for 4 years. I moved from South Wales down to Dorset, where I had my first teaching role in a small primary school in West Dorset. And I stayed there for several years. And during that time, I was an acting head teacher, deputy head teacher, not head teacher. Following that role, I moved to a larger infant school, and I became a deputy head teacher there, and I taught in year 2. So up until that point, I taught reception year 1 and year 2, as well as being a deputy head teacher. Following my experience in that school, the infant school and the junior school amalgamated and became a primary school. So I moved across to the primary school, and it was a huge school, over 700 pupils from nursery right through to year 6. So very different from my first experience of a small primary school of 100 pupils. I was deputy head teacher in that school and loved it. The thing I loved the most was having the leadership role, but also having a full-time teaching commitment as well, because the best thing about working in a school are the children. After my time in the primary school, I then decided that I wanted to progress, and I became a head teacher and went back to a small primary school. So I was a head teacher for nearly 12 years in a small primary school of nearly 90 pupils. Working in schools is such a rewarding job. I've got Charlotte here with me. Charlotte works as a teaching assistant in a local school in Dorchester, and she's going to talk to you in a little while about her experiences. For me, it is probably the best job in the world. You are actually making a difference to young people's lives, and even small little tiny things that you do can have such a positive impact on our young people. As well as working with the children, you also are building relationships with the parents and the carers, and often, you know, being a class teacher, being a head teacher, being a teaching assistant, you're actually supporting parents and their families in lots of different ways. During my time in education, I've also had the privilege to work with a huge range of colleagues, and the people who work in schools are so dedicated and hardworking. Working in a school isn't the easiest of jobs to go into. It can be very demanding at times, but actually having the camaraderie and the positive relationships with colleagues, working together and being part of a team, there's real sense of community and working together. So if you are watching this, it is maybe because you want to work in a school yourself. One of the courses I run for Whitehead-Ross is support work in schools. And I'm going to just share a presentation with you so that you can have a little think about whether it's where you want to be. So I'm just going to bring up my screen. So this is an introduction to support roles in schools. So within schools, if you as a support role, there are different elements. So you can work as in administration, lunchtime, and as classroom-based staff. If we think about the classroom-based staff, there are different roles. So you could have teaching assistant, which is also called learning support assistant, and LSA. Then there are SEND, special education needs and disability assistants. So adults who are working specifically with children with additional needs. When you're thinking about working with younger children, you might be a preschool assistant. And there's also opportunities for development as you work as a support member of staff. So you could become a cover supervisor, so covering for the class teacher, or a high-level teaching assistant at HLTA. The responsibilities of a classroom TA are varied. I'm sure Charlotte will fill you in shortly on her role within school. When I first started in education, teaching assistants' roles were very different to what's expected of them today. There's obviously the need for you to support pupils, but you're also there to support the teacher. You're there to support the curriculum and obviously the bigger and wider supporting of the school. Oops. Supporting the teacher, you need to prepare the classroom, get them ready for learning, working with keeping records and giving regular feedback to teachers, reinforcing classroom behaviour and behaviour management in line with the school's behaviour policy. There's also things like clerical and administrative support, promoting positive values, attitudes and behaviour, assisting in preparing resources, and if you're working with children with additional needs, it's also working on things like individual education plans and other learning needs as well. When you think about supporting the school, is being part of that bigger team, is contributing to the vision and the values of the school. As a parent, you might realise that there are lots of policies and procedures relating to schools, so being aware and complying to those. Attending staff meetings and contributing to whole school development, establishing effective working relationships with colleagues and other professionals, assisting in supervising pupils during lessons, playtimes, and also there's opportunities to do extracurricular activities as well, and liaising with parents and carers as part of your role. Within the curriculum, there are lots of things for you to be able to do. So it's learning supporting the learners with the activities directed by the teacher. You might need to adjust the curriculum, adjust the planning if you're working individually with pupils. Preparing work and other activities, being familiar with the school's curriculum and the schemes of work and supporting the teacher with that. And particularly working as a teaching assistant, one of your roles is supporting children who need extra support, either through interventions and guidance or within the classroom. There's always new things coming into education, so it's keeping abreast of new guidance and initiatives that would enhance the learning. And IT is a huge factor in our schools these days, especially during lockdown and with the pandemic. So IT is used lots in schools, so being able to support the pupils in school. If you're going to become or want to become a classroom teaching assistant, there are lots of attributes that would be really useful for you to think about. You know, you need to be patient, you need to be an attentive listener, and you need to be empathetic. You need to have an encouraging nature so that children know that they're making progress, and you need to be patient, respectful and consistent. So if that sounds like you, then you'd make an excellent teaching assistant. I'm just going to stop sharing and come back to the screen. So as I say, one of my roles for Whitehead-Ross is to deliver the support work in schools training. It's a 10-week course, 1 day a week. And that's where I met Charlotte. Charlotte joined my Dorchester group before Christmas and took part in the course and got her qualification. So I'm going to go across to Charlotte now. So this is Charlotte. And Charlotte, as I say, did the course and was successful at the end of the course in obtaining a teaching assistant post in one of our local schools. So Charlotte, why did you choose to become a teaching assistant?
Well, I've always thought about working with children. I've always loved being around children. I love doing creative activities. It was just, I kept coming back to the same ideas over the years, and I'd done a little bit of study. I'd done child development as part of health and social care, and then a few years later I'd done a little bit with child psychology as well. And but I'd always worked in hospitality. It was my comfort zone. It's something I'd always done. So I continued with that for a while, but I just kept thinking of it, and I just love being around children. I just always felt happy around children. And so I finally got to a stage where I thought, you know, I really want to kind of follow a career of working with children. And yeah, I haven't looked back really. I've really loved doing it.
Brilliant. So what's the best thing about your new role?
There's two things that really stick in my mind. There's lots of good things about work on children. It's really, really amazing to work with children, but it is so rewarding. Even if you can make just a small difference to a little one in that day, might just be something really simple, like explaining something in a different way, and just seeing their reaction is just really, really lovely. It's so rewarding. And it fits around family life really well. So for me, I've got a 5-year-old at home, and it's really lovely to be able to have lots of quality time with her. So you get a really lovely work-life balance of doing something really rewarding, really enjoyable, really varied, being creative as well in the classroom and having lots of freedom with that. And then having that balance of being able to enjoy family time as well, and, you know, lots of quality time with my daughter as well. So yeah, lots of positives.
And you obviously did the support work in school course before you got the job. Was that helpful?
It was really helpful, yeah, because like I mentioned, I'd done bits of studies over the years, but nothing recent and nothing really relevant to schools. So everything I'd learned in the course was really specific to working in the schools. So it just gave me so much more knowledge, and in an interview that was really invaluable to be able to talk about all of those things that, you know, all that knowledge that I'd gained from it. So yeah, very, very useful. It was really good to have on your CV. And it was nice socially as well, meeting other people that had common interests, and, you know, being able to discuss different issues. I know in the course we'd kind of stick to the content, and then sometimes we'd go off talking about something different. But it was all really valuable and really useful. And yeah, I think without that, I wouldn't have, you know, gone into the role. So it gave me a stronger position to be able to pursue a role as a teaching assistant and get that interview and, you know, have all those things to talk about.
It was a supportive group as well, from what I remember.
Yeah,
you know, when you were going for interviews and, you know, looking at jobs, you know, sharing experience and talking about that was something that you had a shared interest in as well, wasn't it?
It was, definitely. And it's really motivating, meeting once a week and, you know, having all that support around you is really motivating to, you know, push you into doing something that you really want to do.
Excellent. So do you have any advice for if there's somebody watching who is thinking about becoming a teaching assistant? Do you have any advice that you could give them?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're interested in working with children, definitely find out a bit more about the course. If it's something that you feel would interest you, then just go for it. You've got nothing to lose. It's only 10 weeks as well, so it's actually quite short. You learn so much from it. It's really, really interesting. I would say if you do an application and you don't get invited for an interview, don't get too disheartened by it. Always ask for feedback as well, because that can be really, really useful. Things like volunteering are really useful as well. So if you can contact schools and get some voluntary experience from that, then that can be really helpful to see what it's like to work in a school. And the other thing that I did is I've always worked in hospitality, so something completely different. But if you can, in your role that you're in, get some experience as well, then that can be really helpful for going on to work in the school as well. So for me, I did school visits and I was able to talk about that in an interview as well. So if you can look at other areas that you can get experience from as well, then that can be really useful for having things to talk about in an interview. But yeah, staying positive, not giving up. Yeah, feedback is really good and volunteering is really good.
Thank you, Charlotte.
That's okay, no problem.